let's read a really scary story that was sent to us from Madagascar. In Madagascar, witchcraft is a very serious issue, and it genuinely scares the hell out of me. Malagasy witches are normal people during the day and witches during the night, starting around 11 p.m. Witchcraft was already prominent here from the early 17th century, and we still don't really know how it arrived here. It was typically used to heal people, but things quickly went out of hand. To become a witch, one needs to sign a pact with a spirit, generally an evil one, and those can be found pretty much everywhere, especially in isolated places where graves can be found. Witches here typically walk around at night, naked and covered in oil or grease to make it harder to catch them. Once you come face to face with a witch, you will find yourself unable to move, and she'll pretty much use you like a horse. The evil spirit they are attached to guides them towards the cemetery and isolated graves to raid them and get the remains inside, such as bones and eyeballs, only for the recent burials, to perform rituals. If the spirit asks them to sacrifice their children, they are obligated to and can't fight back. When a witch dies, the spirit will travel to the first person who touches her. Anyone you walk past could be a witch, and you wouldn't know it unless you see them in the dead of night. What happened is that my younger brother had recently started experiencing sleep paralysis, which here is related to witches. He told me that he suddenly woke up in the middle of the night and felt a very heavy weight on his chest. He tried to lift his arms to no avail and tried to scream, but no sound came out of his mouth. When he told my mother the next day, I told him to close his blinds properly, but my mother just looked at me like I was an idiot. She said, "Closing your blinds won't change anything." She then told my brother to get a glass and fill it halfway with water and then place a teaspoon inside before placing the glass on the window. Apparently, this stops the witches from entering the house. And it seemed to work because my brother didn't complain about sleep paralysis anymore. Yet a few nights ago, everyone in the house was asleep except for myself as I was watching a show on my phone while wearing my earphones. It was around 1 a.m. when my dog suddenly jolted awake next to me and started whimpering. I took my earphones off and was about to scold her when I heard a woman singing outside. In fact, I could hear her clearly since the window in my room was facing the street. The next morning, my mother told me that there was a witch outside that night. She told me that she could hear her singing, and I told her that I heard it too. She told me that she was trying to get up to wake up my father, but she couldn't even open her eyes. Then my father walked into the room and said that he had a dream in which he had opened the bathroom window. The bathroom is right next to my room, both have a window facing the street, and he saw a woman singing underneath my window. He told me that he had unalived her in that dream. I'm honestly still a bit shaken up from that night, and this morning I had a little chat with our housekeeper, and she told me that there's definitely someone living in the trees next to my house, because there's a very clear pathway there, and coincidentally, there used to be a few tombs right there, and a witch was already caught there around the early 2010s. She was caught by a few men living nearby and was chained to a streetlight, so everyone could see that she was a witch. She was never seen again after that day. There's a rumor going on around in my neighborhood that one of the local shopkeepers is a witch, and to be honest, I believe it. I will update you if anything else happens. Okay, so we do have a couple of updates. Here's the first one. Hi again, little update. It's currently 1:43 p.m. and the supposed witch came over here. She was looking for my parents, and she literally spread something on the gate while waiting. I told her my parents weren't home, but she wouldn't leave. The housekeeper saw her, and she told me to immediately go inside because apparently she had weird vibes. This isn't much, but she definitely put something on the gate. And then we have another update. Hey, one more update because a lot has happened. So there's two types of witches, healers and the evil ones. We went to see a healer, and he told us to be careful. Apparently there's more than just one witch in this neighborhood. There's a total of 31 witches. Believe me or not, that is freaking crazy. And the healer said that the one we thought was a witch is in fact one, and that she is after one of my parents. Okay, so we were just like emailing back and forth, and then this is one of her replies. It's important. A lot of people don't know about Malagasy and African witchcraft in general. There are a few reports in English on the internet, and it is very important to keep in mind that most witches became like this because of jealousy or search of wealth. A lot of foreigners believe that it is just a legend, but it's something that you have to see with your own eyes to believe. There's a video on YouTube, and it basically shows what was captured by their security camera in their backyard. You can see around 3 people completely naked trying to get into the house, which was actually protected if I'm not wrong. The video is so freaking scary, y'all, but I'm gonna insert it right now. Okay, whenever I was like first watching the video, I thought maybe this is like animals, but the more that you freaking watch it, you can actually tell that it is in fact humans being freaking weird trying to get into this house. I mean, that would be terrifying to see in the middle of the night. This is such a freaking scary story, and I hope this person and their family are protected. I don't know how to get witches away from you. That is so freaking scary. Let us know in the comments if you know anything about the witches in Madagascar.
Let's read a scary and true story. I don't usually talk about this because I know how it sounds. If someone else told me this story, I'd probably assume that they were exaggerating or had imagined parts of it. But this happened to me. Last autumn, I rented a small cabin in northern Norway. It was about a half an hour from the nearest proper road. After that, it was just a rough forest path with nothing but trees, thick forests in every direction. To the north of the cabin, there was a huge lake, dark, deep, and completely still. No boats, no docks, no other cabins. I wanted silence, and I got it. The first day was normal. I chopped some wood, walked along the shoreline, took photos of the water. The lake was unnaturally calm. Even when the wind moved through the trees, the surface barely rippled. That night, I heard something outside. At first, I thought it was just the forest settling, branches, maybe an animal, but then I heard the porch creak, slowly, one board at a time. Not the quick scatter of paws, not the heavy stomp of a moose. It sounded measured, like someone was carefully testing each step. I stayed still in bed and listened. The steps moved along the wall and past the window. Then they stopped right outside. I told myself not to look. Eventually, it got quiet. The next morning, I checked the ground around the cabin. I expected hoof prints or paw marks. Instead, I found impressions in the damp soil that didn't look right. They were long and narrow, almost like footprints but stretched, as if whatever made them had feet too long for its body. And the spacing between them was wrong, too far apart. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it. Later that day, I walked down to the lake again. That's when I noticed something I'm sure hadn't been there before. The sand along the shoreline was disturbed in a wide path leading up from the water. Not like something had walked out, but more like something had dragged itself onto the land. The water was completely still. That night is the part I can't explain. Around 2 a.m, I woke up to a sound coming from the direction of the lake. It wasn't splashing. It was heavier than that. A dragging, scraping noise over gravel and wet sand. Slow, rhythmic. I forced myself to sit up and look through the window facing north. At first, I thought I was seeing a tree trunk standing near the shore, something vertical against the dark water. Then it moved. It was tall, easily taller than any person. Its body looked too thin, elongated in a way that didn't seem natural. Its arms hung too low, almost reaching the ground. The way it moved wasn't like walking. It would lean, bend slightly sideways, and then shift forward in one controlled motion, like it was adjusting to being on land. Its skin looked pale gray in the moonlight, not reflecting light but absorbing it. Its head was the worst part. It didn't look like it had clear facial features. The front of it seemed smooth, except for 2 narrow, vertical slits where eyes should be. I couldn't see pupils, just darkness. It wasn't wandering. It was moving toward the cabin. I remember thinking, it came from the lake. The porch creaked again. slowly. The same careful pressure on the boards I had heard the night before. Then I heard something dragging lightly along the outer wall. A faint scraping sound like long fingers tracing the wood. There were 3 knocks on the door. Not aggressive, not loud, just deliberate. I was frozen. I couldn't even convince myself to breathe properly. The handle moved, slowly turning. I know I locked it. The handle stopped. The knocking came again, 3 times. Then everything went silent. And what I still can't explain is that a few seconds later, I heard the same 3 knocks again, from inside the cabin. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember passing out. I just remember the temperature dropping so suddenly that I could see my breath in the air. And I remember the smell. Cold water, mud, something old. The next morning, the front door was still locked, but the inside of the door, the wood had 3 long, thin scratches running vertically down the center. Oh my gosh. They were too straight to be random. I left that same day. I haven't gone back to that lake, and I don't think I ever will. Thank you in advance. Oh my gosh. Inga, thank you so much for sending this story. This is absolutely insane. And I did some research because I'm not very well versed on folklore outside of the US, but the closest thing that I could find that would potentially explain this is a nixie, which in Norwegian folklore seems to be a water spirit, like a humanoid shape-shifting water spirit, but I'm not sure if they're ever outside of the water or if they just try to lure you into the water. And I feel like the freakiest part is that it was somehow able to be inside of your cabin and you were able to smell it, and the temperature changing, the whole story is just terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Thank you so much for sharing this with me. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can, and I will see you in the next one.
I didn't think this story was gonna be as scary as it was, but it definitely is, so let me just start. So this guy says that when he was younger, one of his distant aunts passed away. He says that he really didn't know her, but he could tell the big impact that her death made on the family. Since they all traveled into the town that she passed away at, they sent him to go and spend the night with his cousins. He explains how they weren't gonna stay at the cousin's house, but at their cousin's grandmother's house. He had never met their grandmother until then, and he explains how she was really nice and even asked him to call her Mama Carmen. And no, it was not his grandmother. He was related to the uncle. The aunt was by law married, and his aunt, so it was the mom's mom, so not his grandmother, but his cousin's grandmother. I hope that makes sense. He explains that Mama Carmen's house was really big and it was made out of wood and it was so pretty, but he knew that there was just something off or weird about it. So when nighttime came, they directed him to this really big room in the house, and the older cousin said something to him that just threw him off. Before walking out of the bedroom, his cousin tells him, hey, whatever you do, just don't respond to them. And he was like, what? What do you mean? And the cousin tells him, just don't respond to the voices. Don't respond to the thing that's gonna talk to you from under the bed. Bitch, if you think I was about to stay there, I'm gonna go wherever you're going after that, cause what the hell? However, he knew his cousins and how much they play around, all the pranks they've done on him in the past, so he was just like, ugh, this is another prank, so whatever, yeah, I won't listen to the voices. He also admits that when his cousins would stay at his house, he would also scare them, so obviously he just thought this was a joke. So he ends up falling asleep and then wakes up to a voice calling him by his name. Felipe. He thought he was dreaming, but as he opened his eyes, he could have sworn that he heard that last little Felipe. Not me giving myself goosebumps right now. So he's laying there very still, awake, and hears nothing. And as he's drifting off to sleep again, he hears that voice again. Felipe. This time, he recognized the voice calling him by name. It had been a very long time since he had heard that voice. It was almost like he had forgotten what that voice sounded like, and it was because it was his mom's voice. His mother, who was no longer living. He immediately gets up and starts walking towards the door. He says he doesn't even want to look back. He doesn't even have the courage to look back and see what is underneath the bed, but he exits the room. However, when he finally makes it to the door where his cousins were sleeping, he said that he felt embarrassed. He thought to himself, if I go in there and tell them that I'm scared or tell them that I heard voices, they're never gonna let it go. I'm gonna have to hear this for the rest of my life, and he didn't want to deal with that. He said that it took him a minute to grow some courage, but he just turned around and went right back to the bedroom that he was sleeping in. He walks down the hallway, goes into the room, lays down, and he's laying there for a good minute. And finally, he is drifting off to sleep, and that is when he hears the voice again. Felipe,
"You have nothing to forgive me for," he said, half asleep, responding to the voice.
"You wish for me to die, but I forgive you,"
the voice responded. So this is where Felipe finally starts telling us a story about what happened with his mom back when she was alive. And he says that he has to confess something that he had never told anyone. His mom was really sick, so sick that she fell into like some sort of paralysis on her body. And he had to take care of the mom because the dad basically abandoned them when this happened because he couldn't deal with it. So can you imagine, like, the mom fell into paralysis, the dad left because he just couldn't deal with it, and he left his son to take care of a fully grown adult. He does say that the dad did continue to send them money just to help out around the house, but he never showed up. He stopped playing outside with the neighborhood kids. He stopped doing his homework. He didn't go to school anymore. And all he did all day long, 24/7, was to take care of his mom. And he admits that at that time, he really hated his life and everybody who was in it. And yes, it's true. He really wished for his dad to die for doing this to him, but he also admits that he wished for his mom to die as well. He says that he doesn't wish her dead the same way he wished his dad dead. He wished her dead just so that she can get some peace, so that she wouldn't be in pain, and so that he can also just be a kid again. And he says that it was really hard to take care of her because she couldn't eat by herself, she couldn't shower by herself, she couldn't even go to the restroom. So it was things that he had to do for her, and it was a lot. But that desire for his mom to die was something that he never told anyone, not a single soul. And this is in fact the very first time that he's writing this down for this podcast to share with the world. So we go back to the voice telling him that she forgives him for wishing her dead. He is more asleep than awake when he asks for forgiveness to the voice that sounds like his mom. He admits that he doesn't know if it was really his mom or what was underneath that bed, but because of what the voice said, he wanted to ask for forgiveness, and he actually put his hand down underneath the bed. He didn't know what he expected. He didn't know if he expected somebody to grab his hand, for someone to say that he's forgiven, but he put his hand down there and actually fell asleep with his hand just hanging there. After falling asleep, he was awoken by a weird sound, and when he opened his eyes, it's when he felt a sensation of something touching his hand. He explains how the hand felt really rough, and it was definitely coming from underneath that bed. At first, he thought he was dreaming, but no, this was definitely not a dream. He was definitely awake. So by this point, the hand was already grabbing at his chest, and he was terrified. He said his heart was beating so fast. However, his curiosity won over the fear that he was feeling. So he literally moved to the edge of the bed and looked to see what was coming out from underneath the bed. What he saw was this very long, gray, old-looking hand coming from underneath that bed. It was fucked up. It was scary. As he was looking at the hand, he could see his hand next to that other hand, so he knew he was awake, but he couldn't take in what he was seeing. It was a lot, and it was crazy. He said at that point, his body became very cold. He was very stiff, and he can still look at his hand and at the hand grabbing at it now, like they're trying to pull him down. And in that very moment, as he's being pulled down, the voice is saying, "I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you." Over and over again. It was at this moment that voice completely changed. It didn't even sound like his mom's voice anymore, and it sounded like it was making fun of him. So now the voice was like mocking him, saying, "Do you forgive me? Do you forgive me?" Like over and over. He said that the way the voice changed was like it was using his mom's voice, and then all of a sudden it was just not his mom at all. So like it was trying to trick him. For some reason, this reminds me of Leprechaun. Have you guys seen it? Where like his voice changes. That was also the moment where he remembered what his cousin told him. If a voice is talking to you, do not respond. He wanted to take that advice, so he decided to stay quiet, but at that moment, it was too late. He had already talked back to the voice. Without knowing what to do, he said that he literally bit his mouth so that he wouldn't talk anymore, closed his eyes, and just stayed very still. He even tried to like let go of the hand that was holding him, but the more he tried to let go of the hand, the more the hand was trying to pull him underneath the bed. "Felipe, let me go. I'm getting scared. I can't do it. Felipe, let me go. Felipe, let me go." That's what the voice was telling him now. He finally understood that that was not his mom. That was not his mom's ghost. That was not his mom at all. It was actually the complete opposite of what his mom was. So he fought. He said that he fought for the longest time. He tried to hit. He tried to hold on to the bed. He was not about to let this thing drag him under. And he was successful because it finally like let go of his hand from all the fighting that he was doing. And when that happened, he immediately turned to like the side of the bed where the wall is, where that thing cannot reach him. He said that he sat there next to the wall on the bed, just like waiting for a hand to come up and try to get him again. And it was like the longest silence he had ever experienced. But that was also when the sun finally came out and he heard somebody in the kitchen. He literally jumped off the bed to the door into the kitchen, and it was Mama Carmen that was in there. He told Mama Carmen everything that had happened in the bedroom the entire night. He admits that she never interrupted him. She heard everything he had to say. When he finally finished telling her what happened, she just looked at him, smiled at him, and said, "You shouldn't give anything that much importance." That surely it was a hallucination or he was dreaming. That maybe it was because of him going to the cemetery and funerals because of that aunt that passed away that might have caused him to hallucinate or have these types of dreams. She also asked him not to pay attention or to listen to his cousins because they're little scaredy cats and they also love scaring people but were scared as well. She told Felipe that they used to sleep in that bedroom and then didn't want to sleep in that bedroom anymore, so maybe they made it up so that no one could sleep in there. Sorry, what? You're telling me that they've experienced this, but you're saying they made it up because what? She said that she believes that they made up this story so that they can move out of that bedroom and somebody else occupy the space that they were always scared to sleep in. He admits that he would have loved to believe her saying that they made this up, but how would they explain the voice? How could he explain the things that the voice was saying that only he knew? Now I'm curious as to what his cousins experienced in that room because it's obvious that they've experienced something. He was like, there's no way that they could have pranked me with my mom's voice and saying things that I had never told anybody. So yeah, she doesn't want me to be scared, but I believe my cousins and I believe they experienced something in there. He also says that he's never gonna forget what that hand looked like. Like, that was not a dream. That was not something that he dreamt of. He was awake and he was there. But man, I would not know what to do if that happened to me. What do you guys think?
Growing up, my mama used to tell me you got to be careful because you can invite the evil in, right? And if you're not spiritual, you really don't understand what that means because inviting the evil in sometimes is not even being verbal with it. It's where you're at, what you're doing, and what you accept, right? Because you're inviting these things into your life. So quick story time of something that happened to me when I was probably about 17 years old, and it made me... It changed the way that I thought for the rest of my life when it came to going over people's houses, having people in my spaces and shit like that, because energy is very transferable, right? So as a kid, I realized that I had a gift not to only see what people had going on and feel energy, but I could see things. You know, I could see things. I could feel things. And I was always very hyper aware of these things. And it's a gift that I've had my entire life, right? So when I'm about 17, one of my homegirls invite me over her house. I get over there. I'm already feeling a little off. I'm feeling like it's just a weird vibe. It's weird energy in the home as soon as I walk in the home. But me being me, 17 years old, not really fully understanding my gift, I'm trying to push it off to the side and say, you know what? I don't know what that feeling is, but right now I'm not feeling the feeling that I'm feeling, right? So I get over there, you know, her mom's cooking dinner, whatever the case may be. We chilling in her room, right? We start talking this, that, and the third, right? Come to find out, they're part of the occult, right? At that time, I really didn't know what the occult was. I just brushed it off like, all right. You know what I'm saying? So we eat. As soon as we get done eating, my stomach start hurting. So I'm like, I feel sick. Like, I don't feel good. Like, I feel sick. So the girl was like, you could just stay here. You can go lay down in my bed. See, my mama didn't play that spending the night shit. So no, I gotta go to the house. Like, I don't feel good. So they kept trying to get me to stay. So something told me to call my mama. See, my mama was one of them motherfuckers. Like, she was about all of that shit. And she also had a gift. And she also knew. So as soon as my mama heard my voice on the phone, she said, get your ass up out of there. Something ain't right. I said, yes, ma'am. I got my ass up out of there. Something right. I'm driving down one of the black roads in South Carolina on the way home. I'm about 25 minutes from the house. All the roads dark. It ain't no street lights. Ain't none of that. It's just your car light against the motherfucking woods and darkness. That's it. Right. I'm driving down the road. Right. Something ran across the front of my car. I thought it was a deer. So I stopped real quick. Couldn't see what it was. Right. So I sat there for a second looking around. I'm like, I don't know what that was. As I start going again, I look over to my left and something is running beside my motherfucking car. It looked like a midget running beside my car. Keep in mind, I'm going about 45 at this point because I'm accelerating. So I'm going at a steady speed. This motherfucking shit is running beside my car. Next thing, I called my mama on the phone, and this is before they had Bluetooth on the phone. So I'm holding my motherfucking phone up to my ear, talking to my mama or whatever. My mama praying on the phone as I'm driving. She said, them folks is evil. She said, them folks was trying to take something from you. They evil, they evil, they evil. Keep in mind, I didn't go to school with this girl. She went to a school that was, about two cities over from where we lived at. But I knew her because we played basketball together and shit like that. So anywho, I end up getting home. And when I got home, my mama was praying after, she was praying. I looked over, what was running beside my car was gone. I get to the crib, I pull up, my mama standing on the porch waiting on me to come in the house. Soon as I walk up on the porch, she got the anointing oil, she going in, she praying, she going in, she praying, she going in, she praying. And I just remember she making a spiritual bath for me, and she put like some herbs, and she put some Florida water, and she put a whole bunch of shit in the spiritual bath for me, and she told me to get in the bath, right? She gave me some salt, she told me to lick the salt, I got in the bath, she praying over me. And keep in mind, I'm naked, I'm in the bathtub, my mama doing all of this over me. That night, after I get out of the tub, I went to my bed and I laid down. And I've always suffered from sleep paralysis. So when I laid down, I had a dream. I had a dream that a man was coming to get me with no face. And the man reached inside of my head and took out a light in my head. This is the dream that I'm having, right? So I remember me having this dream and me trying to wake up from this dream, and I couldn't move. When I woke up in my room, the man was standing over me in my room where I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, I couldn't do nothing. So I just remember me praying myself out of this trance. As soon as I woke up, I went to my mama's room and told her what happened. My mama woke up, she started burning some incense. She burned some frankincense and myrrh, and she lit some candles, and she began to pray. And as she is praying, I remember like a heaviness lifted off of me. And my mama sit there and she looked me dead in my face and she said, don't you remember when I tell you that you invite the evil in without even knowing you invited the evil in? And I said, Ma, I ain't do nothing. I ain't say nothing. She said, you ate them people food. You invited that evil in. They wanted something that you had, and they was going to do anything in their power to get it. So y'all need to be careful when y'all going around these folks and y'all eating from everybody and putting yourself in situations, because you invite the evil in without you even realizing you inviting the evil in, if you picking up what I'm putting down.
Welcome to episode 18 of Tea After Midnight. Just a little series where we have some tea to keep it classy, but I also tell you a few scary stories. So if this is right up your alley, I'd say hit that follow button and follow along, because I'm here for you every Monday. So tonight's story comes from an email that I received a few days ago. I do want to forewarn you, this story is very creepy and it's very heavy. With that being said, grab some tea and settle in while I tell you a scary story. This happened a few years ago on Halloween night. I live in a very small town with absolutely nothing to do. That being said, my friends decided to come over to my house, and the plan was for us all to watch movies and hang out. A few hours had passed of us watching movies, and it started to get rather boring. One of my friends, who we will refer to as Tommy, said he had an idea. He said that we should go to a cemetery. All of my friends were in agreement and excited to get out of the house and perhaps do a little ghost hunting. I asked Tommy which cemetery he had in mind, as all the cemeteries in our small town were not all that creepy. He rattled off a place on the opposite side of town that I was unfamiliar with. I hardly ever have to go on that side of town, so it was not out of the realm of possibility that I didn't know it existed. Everyone piled in the car and we drove to the cemetery Tommy knew about. We began to walk up the hill that led up to the cemetery. If you were to picture a perfect location to film a scary horror film, this would be it. The little light we had was coming from the full moon, while there was a light breeze that shook the trees enough to make all the dead leaves cascade to the ground. Fog was rolling in, and overhead there were crows cawing in the trees. Like I said, a picture-perfect cemetery. Everyone was being mindful of where they were stepping, making sure not to step on top of a grave. Tommy caught up to the group and said he had something in the car that he wanted to try. The rest of the group confused, looking at each other, wondering what it was that he brought. Tommy ran down the hill to the car, shuffling things around until he found what he was looking for. He sprinted back up the hill, holding something in his hands. Once he finally reached the group again, he turned the item around and showed us a Ouija board. All of my friends seemed intrigued and excited, all but myself and one of my friends, who we will refer to as Amanda. Tommy told us to follow him, and as the group started walking off, Amanda held back and asked me if I was okay with this. I told her honestly, I don't want to mess around with that. Her and I agreed we would sit back and just watch. We met up with the group, and of course Tommy picked the creepiest spot in the cemetery to do this, right next to the mausoleum on the property. Amanda and I sat back as the rest of the group circled around the board, placing their fingers on the planchette. They began asking questions, and a few seconds later, the planchette started moving violently back and forth across the board. Tommy said, "Knock it off," to whoever is doing that. "It's not funny. This is serious." Everyone except Tommy took their fingers off of the planchette, but the piece was still moving back and forth very violently, as Tommy was the only one with his fingers on it. He looked shaken as he lifted his head and said, "Guys, I'm not doing this." No more did he finish that sentence when we heard a knock come from inside the mausoleum. Tommy, visibly shaken, stood up and crept over to the door of the mausoleum and peered inside. From where Amanda and I sat, we could see a faint glow coming from inside. Tommy turned his head toward the group and said there was a candle lit in the center of the floor. He then tried to open the door with much resistance. It wouldn't open. He kept trying, and eventually it cracked open. Tommy stepped inside, walking toward the candle that was lit in the center of the floor. Once he made it to the candle, the door of the mausoleum slammed shut. Tommy began banging on the door, begging us to let him out. The group ran to the door, all of us trying to open the door as Tommy is screaming, "Let me out! This isn't funny! Let me out!" After several minutes of trying to open the door and everyone trying to figure out what to do to get him out of there, Tommy went silent. No more screaming, no more banging, just silence. We called out to him saying, "Tommy, are you okay? What's going on?" Then the candlelight went out. We all kept trying to pull the door off, but it would not budge. Scouring the ground trying to find a key or something to pry the door open, we found nothing. Moments later, we heard 3 knocks at the mausoleum door. Amanda pulled on the handle and it opened with ease. Once the door was open, it took a few seconds and Tommy started to step out, tears streaming down his face. He had a blank expression on his face as he started heading down the hill toward the car. All of us calling out to him, asking him what happened and if he was okay. He walked right past us and said nothing, with the same blank expression. We all started to follow him as Amanda shouted, "Oh wait, we left the Ouija board. I'll run back and grab it." Tommy stopped in his tracks, turned around and looked at her. He said, "Leave it right there. Do not touch it." He then turned back around and walked to the car and got in, saying absolutely nothing. The entire car ride back was silent. We finally made it back to the house and everyone started to leave except myself, Tommy, and Amanda. Tommy sat on the couch with the same blank expression, not saying anything. Amanda got up to leave, and as she was walking out, she turned around and looked at Tommy. She said, "Tommy, what happened in there?" He took a few moments, slowly tilted his head up and said, "We let it out." I asked, "What did we let out?" He said when he stepped in and the door shut, in the corner he saw a tall, slender black shadow standing there. He said the figure blew out the candle and he could feel it coming toward him as if it were going to grab him, but he said it breezed past him to the door and he heard it knock 3 times. And when we opened the door, that's what let it out. Tommy then stood up, grabbed his things and left, not saying another word. Amanda followed him. I tried texting him a few times after that night, but he would never respond. It's been a few years and I've only seen him 1 time. I stopped at a gas station to grab a drink, and while I was in the store, I looked out toward my car. I saw Tommy about to walk in, and he kept looking over his shoulder like he was paranoid something or someone was following him. Before he made it to the door, he started backing away slowly, turned around and ran to his car and left. No one else that was there that night speaks to each other. Everyone has gone their separate ways. A few days ago, Tommy's mom called me to let me know that he had passed away. He took his own life. She told me that ever since that night, something has been off with him. She said that he would barely eat or sleep and that he was terrified to go outside. I feel like something more had to have happened that night. Rest in sweet peace, Tommy. I hope you have found peace and comfort. You are greatly missed. That story is very heavy and very creepy all in one. Thank you so much to the person that sent me this story. We will definitely be keeping it anonymous. And I'm sorry about your friend. Rest in peace, Tommy. But that concludes episode number 18 of Tea After Midnight. If you have any personal, spooky, or scary stories you'd like to share, you can either comment on this video or email me at the email in my bio. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Bye.
Of all the spooky and paranormal subjects out there, Appalachia is one that perpetually freaks me out. And we got another spooky, scary story time about Appalachia because of course we did. And this one takes place in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. A woman named Kim emailed me and said that she and her husband inherited his uncle's house after he sadly passed away last year. They were living in South Carolina but moved to the property after they inherited it in order to renovate it. They were hoping to turn it into a short-term rental for passive income. Kim was a stay-at-home mom. They had a 2-year-old and she was pregnant with their second baby. Her husband was like a blue-collar guy. He was going to do a lot of the renovations himself, and this actually came at the perfect time because they were struggling a little bit financially. They were actually living with her family in South Carolina at the time where they inherit this house, so when they get the opportunity to move out there, she's like, it's no big deal, like we'll just stay here for a couple months. He's going to do a lot of the repairs himself, and then we're going to move back and figure it out. The house was on just under 2 acres up the side of a mountain, and it had not been updated in decades. Besides all the obvious renovations they had to do, they also had to go through all of his stuff and clear the house out. The first night they move in, they move all their stuff in, but really only set up their bed. And so her toddler, and her husband are all in bed together. Everybody's sleeping peacefully when she has this lucid dream of someone opening the door and walking into the bathroom off the master bedroom. It's really dark, so she can't see this figure, but she sees a humanoid figure walk into the room and into the bathroom. She said in her dream she wasn't like scared, but it was unsettling. So she wakes up. Obviously, she knows she was dreaming. She looks around. Her husband and her baby are still asleep. She's like, must have been a weird dream because I'm sleeping in a new place. She lays her head back down to go back to sleep, closes her eyes, and she hears her toddler whisper, Mommy, who is that lady that went in the bathroom? So Kim's like, there's no way. So she wakes her husband up. She's like, I think there's someone in the bathroom. Go check. He's confused, but he goes and checks out the bathroom. No one in there. But still, she can't make sense of how her and her toddler had the same dream. The second night they're there, she has the same exact dream of someone opening the door to the bedroom, walking across the room and into the master bathroom. Whether it's relevant, I don't know, but she said the master bathroom off this bedroom wasn't large. It was just a toilet and a sink. It wasn't like there was somewhere in there that somebody could hide. The third night they're there, she does not have the dream, but she wakes up to her toddler crying next to her. He talks, but not a lot, but he's going on and on about his other mommy and how this lady is telling him that she's his other mommy and to come with her. Kim said up till this point, she had never really considered whether or not she believed in ghosts. She had never had any experiences like this, but she was starting to think that something was weird. She tells her husband about it. Her husband's like, I don't know. I can't make any sense of this. I don't believe in ghosts, really. He said, I know that a lot of people in this area have a lot of superstitions about what's in these mountains. His mom's family was from the area, so he calls his mom the next day. He's like, hey, would you come up here, talk to Kim, hang out with her a little bit? Like, I think she's just freaking herself out. And he's also hoping that his mom can shed some light or at least make Kim feel more comfortable. So she doesn't live too far from there. I guess she comes up the next day, hanging out with the toddler and with Kim. And she's also helping go through some of her brother's things. Her brother had no kids of his own. That's why Kim and her husband inherited the house. But they're going through some of his stuff together. Kim's telling her about these dreams and how the toddler seems affected by these dreams. And her mother-in-law just says, you know, these mountains are really old. There's a lot of spirits hanging around here. She said they're mostly harmless. They can't really do anything to you, but just in case you see her again, just tell her she's not real. And hearing that her mother-in-law wasn't really freaked out by this made her feel a little bit better. So they're going through the stuff. They end up going through some trunks in the second bedroom. In one of the trunks, there are tons of women's clothes, like old-timey women's dresses. And they're a little perplexed when they open the trunk because he had never been married. There was no woman in his life for a long period of time. And so Kim's like, are these your mother's clothes? And her mother-in-law is looking through them and she's like, I don't remember her having anything like this. Like, these don't look like her clothes. And in the bottom of the trunk, there's a note in the uncle's handwriting and it says, keep these here. She's more peaceful that way. So Kim shows her husband. She's like, do you know anything about this? He's like, I have no idea what this is about. They had run in a dumpster and they get rid of the clothes. When I read that part, I was like, oh, come on, guys, come on. Classic ghost mishap. Anyway, that night, so the fourth night they're there, she goes to bed and she has the same dream. But this time when the figure walks into the room, it stops at the end of the bed instead of going into the bathroom. And it stops and it's staring at Kim sleeping in the bed. Kim said she knows she was dreaming. Like, she knows 100% that this was a dream. But in the dream, she was awake. She was lucid. She's looking at the figure. She can't make out any figures, but she can see that it has long hair. And she said it was the same feeling. She wasn't scared, but she was unsettled. And so she remembered what her mother-in-law said and said, you aren't real. And this infuriated the figure because it opened its mouth wide and then rushed up the bed to crawl on top of Kim. She said she felt pressure on her neck. She sat up immediately. She woke up. There was nobody there. She's breathing heavy. She's sweating. She's like, what was that? She looks over at her toddler and she notices her toddler is sitting up in the bed and he's pointing at the bathroom and he says, in there. So Kim wakes up her husband again. She's like, I don't know what's going on. There's somebody in the bathroom. And he's like, this again. And he gets up and he checks and there's nobody in the bathroom, but the faucet is turned on and the water's running. She said that bathroom was pretty much non-functional. Like, it was disgusting. They had not been using it. There's no explanation for how the water was turned off. She said she doesn't understand it. She tried to go back to sleep, but all night she was plagued by these dreams of pressure on her neck, somebody watching her from the corners of the room or standing at the end of the bed. She said at certain times she just felt delirious because she would hear her name whispered from different corners of the room. And it was really just one of the most terrifying nights she's ever had, with zero explanation of what was actually going on. She had had enough. She called her mother-in-law the next day, tells her about it, and she's like, well, maybe that's what the note was referencing, like the clothes that y'all threw away. Like, maybe you should go pick those out of the dumpster and put them back in the house. So Kim did. She said her husband thought she was crazy. She packed them back up in the trunk, put it in one of the closets, but she was done. She was not staying in that house a minute longer. She ended up packing up her and her son. They went back to South Carolina while her husband finished the renovations alone. Apparently he had no supernatural supernatural experiences while in the house. And now it is listed as a short-term rental. They've rented it out a lot. And actually some of the reviews do strange figures, so much that they actually have it as a running joke on their listing. She said she's come to terms with the fact that she's never going back there, but that whatever it is probably harmless. It just wants to live there in peace. But now she's fully convinced that the lore of the Appalachian Mountains and the spirits that linger there are 100% real. If you guys have been following for a while, you know that I've had my own experiences in the mountains. I have no intention to ever go back there. Keep sending me your spooky, scary stories, and I will keep them coming.